Hey, what's up, guys? We are on episode 3 of the Call to Compete podcast. And just a reminder, the main point of this show is just to celebrate all that God has done in and through the ministry of FCA here at NKU, Thomas More, other places. And so far, we've had some great stories of alumni to come back and share. And we have another amazing guest with us this morning. We got Roberto Burlew. He was a former soccer player at NKU. Robbie, how we doing today, man?
Doing great, Nate. Thanks for having me. Obviously loved our time at FCA and just excited to get started.
Yeah, man, let's hop into it. Well, as we like to do, just give us a little history lesson on Berto, kind of like, growing up, what was family like, faith, obviously soccer was a huge part, but just kind of give us a snapshot, kind of pre college, and then we'll kind of unpack your college journey.
Yeah. So like you said, my name is Robert Burlew, but I go by Robbie or Roberto. Yeah, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, I was born and raised there as well as my parents. Always played soccer since I was a kid. I love basketball. I love being outside, just playing with my friends and obviously being active in sports. But my dad played in college at UC and then 1 year professional. So, I always wanted to, follow his steps and, that was my dream to become a professional footballer. So yeah, just growing up in soccer was always amazing, just meeting all kinds of teammates and friends from all over the place and, getting close with them. And then high school came around and that's when, what was it called? What was the high school group? Was it
Young
Young
life?
Life? Yes, Young Life.
Yeah.
In high school is when I got introduced to Young Life because my family isn't too deep into their faith besides my grandma, who very much so is. She works at a church. And so, I would always say that, I was a Christian growing up, but really wasn't in the, like the house of the Lord or, praying consistently. It was just, I go to Young Life, with some friends, and all that, but really wasn't, I didn't know God,
Sure.
basically. So
Got how soon did travel soccer start for you? And then where was high school for you?
yeah, high school was at Finneytown High School, small school. It was only 100 in my graduating class. So very small circle. After eighth grade year, like all of my close, good friends left, to bigger schools to play sports, but I lived around the block. But travel soccer probably started when I was maybe 8 years old, I think. So started off at a young age at King's Hammer. It was called Classics Hammer, then King's Hammer. But so that was my club. Yeah, yeah, they came together. So yeah, that was my club that basically made me, the player I am today.
Awesome. So you start there with what would eventually be King's Hammer, going through. You stayed the course at Finneytown and still got a chance to play at the Division 1 level. So what was that? What was that recruiting process like? And just tell us a little bit about the transition from high school
Yeah, of
to NKU.
course. So a lot of things have changed now, just the recruiting process in high school soccer, club soccer, it always changes. But my process, was a bit tougher, playing at a small school like Finneytown. My dad was the coach, so it was nice to have him. He was always hard on me, but, yeah, yeah.
Push for
But, the top young guys were playing for an academy, which was the DA at the time, the Development Academy, which is like MLS clubs, Columbus Crew,
the
FC Dallas, Indiana Fire, all these teams where you didn't play high school, so that was like the big route. If you go there, you're going to get way more looks from Division 1, schools. They'll say he plays high school, might be a little better, or I would know that I'm better than a different player, but since they're in the DA and have that label on them, they're going to get looks and they're going to get taken by those coaches. That's just how it kind of worked. So, I had to work a little extra harder. My dad played a big part as well as my mom, but my dad was videoing every game. So we're sending clips, games to all these coaches, reaching out as soon as I could, which was after your sophomore year, I believe. So junior, senior year is when I'm getting, emails back, talking to coaches, going to ID camps, just trying to get my name and my face out there. And then senior year was in club. I was playing for the assistant coach at NKU, Blair Stevenson. He was our or he was the age group above me for Kings Hammer. He was the head coach. So I would play with them, and obviously playing in front of a college coach, you want to give it your all every day. And I think he, you know,
For sure.
my skills and my quality. So he was a big part in recruiting me to NK. I got the offer my senior year and then committed there. So
Was it a little bit stressful, just the timing of it being in your senior year before kind of landing that spot? How was
yeah,
your
I
heart
mean,
during that journey?
I didn't have that many friends who were also going to, the collegiate level D1. So I didn't know what their timelines look like. I was really focusing on mine. So I didn't know what was normal, if it was a little late, like, oh, snap, I got to find this team. But, I felt like it, all worked out perfectly, to be honest. So, yeah.
Yeah. Man, so good. So awesome family, super supportive, amazing people. You got kind of your grandmother leading the charge a little bit on the faith side. You're involved a little bit with Young Life. And then you signed to come to NKU to show up on campus, probably early for preseason workouts, and just maybe walk us through a little bit some of those early semesters, kind of freshman
Yeah.
into
So
sophomore year.
obviously, my senior year, it was 2020. Going into my freshman year, that was when COVID happened. So, it was a little different, freshman year experience. As soon as I got on campus, basically no one else was on campus. All, soccer teams, typically there's a lot of internationals. There's only like 3 Americans. And so all my teammates internationally, they couldn't get into the, States because of COVID. So
Mm.
going on campus, I was a little afraid because, I wanted to be with my teammates, roommates. Going into college, not knowing anybody is, a little scary, especially at a high school. So I was most worried about that. But as I got on campus in my housing, living alone, I found out that that was so nice, not worried about anybody else's mess, living on my own. And there were some teammates here, and my high school friends were all still in Cincinnati. So it was good to be around them. And soccer wise, everybody got to opt out of the fall season since it didn't happen. So that's when I joined FC Cincinnati's academy, and I played with them for a year, which was a great experience. I think that, was a big reason why I transitioned to a right back, because I came in as a midfielder. So playing for them, meeting all those friends, and then, I guess just meeting, everybody, because, COVID laws said that we weren't allowed to meet with other teams, but, I got to know a lot of the freshmen and sophomore baseball guys, women's soccer, basketball, obviously. So, overall, a really good first year, to be honest.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, such a weird one, but it sounds like you really had some interesting opportunities that you wouldn't have had by being able to opt out and do the FCC team and all that stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Well, I'm trying to remember when we first met, but I knew that you showed up to the FCA house, I think, with a couple of your teammates. I think RJ was in there a couple times, and you had some others to the OG FCA house, as we call it now, there on Johns Hill Road. So remind me what initially brought you into the ministry, and then what were
Yeah,
kind of those early experiences like?
I think it was Brendan. He was Canadian. I think he was one of the first teammates who
That's
I
right.
went with. Just some other athletes, who was just inviting everybody, getting us in. So going with him, I was like, oh yeah, of course. I have some friends or some other teammates. Meet some new people and try it out, because obviously I enjoyed Young Life. So I wanted to see what NKU FCA was about. And, so went a few times, really, really enjoyed the vibe. Obviously, it was a bit new to me, just, the worshiping as a group, all singing. So it was all new, but, that's my speed. I really liked all of that. And then obviously getting to know you, and obviously you were so consistent with me, because, I wasn't going every Monday, whether it was soccer or, just, teammates would go with me. But, you being so consistent with me, always reaching out, hey, how you doing this week? I wasn't feel like I was getting pressured or rushed. It just felt so, you know, warm and welcoming. And, obviously that got me to go more and more. And then, look where we are now. So
For sure. Yeah, I know you had those early days kind of checking in. It's certainly not very normal, but you were kind of like just checking things out here and there. And then you had a teammate, Sam Robinson, and I was like, "Hey, Sam, dude, let's let's try to get some sort of soccer group going. And I don't know who all he ended up inviting, but at the end of it, it was
Yep.
me, you,
Yep.
and Sam a whole bunch of times at Clean Eats over in Newport, grabbing some lunch and getting into the word together and talking through life and talking through some of the ups and downs of the season. And it was, I knew that was probably a bit of a step for you. Like in one sense, you were kind of
Mhm.
comfortable. You were always comfortable, a bit more outgoing in the group, but hey, there's no really nowhere to hide. When there were just three of us at lunch. I'm thinking, how was that for you? Was that like a
Yeah,
bit of a
100%.
leap of faith for
Because,
you, or
I
what was
think
that
it
like?
is different, going with a bigger group, friends, getting it all in. But, going in with just three people, that's when, you're most vulnerable and, you talk about your problems and, I can let more out and, really dive in deep to harder questions and face those things straight on, and obviously with a teammate is always good, and obviously you as well. I felt like we were all brothers in that space and it was safe, just to speak about everything. So I definitely thought that was a big leap of faith before leading into that following year, when we hit the winter FCA camp, and Wade, Lydia, all my best friends, so the whole crew.
The whole crew there. Yeah. No, it was some really sweet memories for sure. And then I know just, yeah, running into you a couple times at an FCC game and that sort of thing, being able to meet dad and all that. But yeah, let's just fast forward. So you've kind of been around ministry environments. You kept opting in. You got a little bit deeper in sort of a smaller group with a teammate. And then let's just go back to, yeah, winter recharge.
Yeah.
Initially you couldn't go. You're like me. You were doing our normal recruiting, like we would love for everybody to go, like we'll help you out scholarship wise, the whole nine. But you said, hey, I have this tryout that could really mean, be consequential for my career going afterwards. So it's just a direct conflict. Can't do it. Sorry, Nate. And then you hit me up. I don't know, what
Yeah,
was it? I mean, it was like the night before.
it
It
was
was within
crazy. It
24
was,
hours of it started.
I forgot exactly what happened, but, because in that time I was going on a bunch of trials and, seeing if going pro right after graduating, because I ended up doing a grad year at Wisconsin. I just wanted to get some feelers out, see what was best for me. So, you know, I think, can't remember exactly what happened, but I think it just got canceled or it just ended up falling through. And, obviously all my best friends, Wade, Lydia, Shay, they're all going. And I was like, well, this is almost perfect now. Now I up in my faith, with a bunch of other, younger Christians, athletes, and, you know, it turned out to be the best decision I made, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just remember being on the couch at my house, and it was late the night before we're leaving, and you told me the news that you're available, but signups had already closed. We're supposed to give numbers, 10 days out at least. Usually they give us a little bit of grace, but man, they're pretty hard line on the deadlines. And we had just had somebody drop, like literally 30 minutes before you texted me, and so we've always known that it was a bit of a God thing working behind the scenes, but we had somebody drop within 30 minutes. I didn't even reach out to you. You texted me like, dude, I'm
Free, yeah,
available now.
free
I'm
to
like,
tell
bro,
the
somehow we have a spot. So I don't know what to do, but it's game time. Yeah, man. So you show up to that, which I think is a bit of a leap of faith, because it's one thing to go to a lunch. You could get through a lunch, or you could cut out if you really needed to, or show up to an FCA, like just, a huddle. But to go overnight, an hour away, you had your friends there, but that was still kind of a big step that I was, I'm probably grateful that you made. So just describe a little bit about, man, what was winter recharge like for you going in, and then you can even talk about
uh,
the late night conversation into
it
Sunday morning.
was amazing. Obviously, going with the whole NKU crew, but also meeting a bunch of different athletes from all these different colleges. Obviously, in Kentucky, who I haven't met before, maybe I've seen online, but just to get them to know them more personally and see them, sacrificing to be there and taking their step in their journey, because everybody has different steps and phases of their life, and I enjoyed every second of it. Tommy was, our group leader. So yeah, yeah. So he was saying being with Tommy was great, and Wade and a bunch of other great guys, really just diving into the word and obviously having fun as well, playing all these games. And then for me, I think it was, a little scary because, I always felt like, I wasn't really ready, to make that next step in my faith, just getting deep and talking about baptism and all that, which, was a big conversation that we had during the camp. So, just talking with all the athletes late at night, so I think I stayed up all night. I think one of those nights, literally just chat. I was
Pretty close
tired.
because we had to go get you, dude. We had to go like knock on your door to
I think it was a
get you
really
good
good
session.
conversation because, just like I said, I always thought I wasn't, good enough or ready enough in my faith. I didn't know enough. I haven't finished reading the Bible. You know, I never thought that, I'd be able to get baptized until I did all these things, X, Y, and Z. But, speaking with them and, reading the word, I'll know that I'll never be perfect. I'm saying? No one will. But, you know, I really got that, presence and felt that, now is the time to take that leap and start this phase of my journey. And, obviously it's one of the best decisions I made, giving my life up, to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And yeah, so that next morning was special, standing by your side and, you praying over me and obviously making arrangements. I think it was February to get baptized.
Yeah, right. Yeah, early February. Well, man, that's an incredible realization, and I love it. Part of what I love about your story is you took time to truly to seek, to learn, to grow, to ask questions, and the humility to continue to be hungry to learn is something I've always loved about you. And I don't think that's really stopped. And to have that and just be open to the truth. And you had wisdom poured into you, and it is not an uncommon feeling to think, man, I'm not ready to say yes to Jesus and confess him as Lord because I'm not good enough yet. It's really
Mhm.
one of the pictures we get sometimes is
Yep.
you don't wanna feel like you have to clean yourself off first to get into the shower. You just go and get into the shower and allow him to work from the inside out, and I just love that you had that realization and responded to it. Like, a lot of people, I think, would be right on the cusp sometimes, but other just external factors or pressures will keep people or will hold them back, and it was pretty quickly that hey, we just gave the invitation that morning. Like, hey, today might be your day. Like this event is designed to be a catalyst for your growth, and today might be your day. And yeah, man, I'll never forget you walking up and you're like, hey, man, today's my day. And I was like, I was a little bit, I was so like excited that I was a little bit shook. I had to like gather myself a little bit to have to with you
Mhm.
and pray with
Yep.
you. But that was such a joy. And then we celebrated with Tommy and the rest of the huddle lead, and got back. And again, just being sober minded afterwards of okay, now that the event is over, you got full sleep, couple nights sleep in, let's meet, let's follow up, let's talk through this. And you were like, no, dude, I'm game on. I know what I'm saying yes to, hopping in. So yeah, take us to baptism night. What's interesting about college ministry is you didn't really have a home church per se that you were really connected to at that point. So you said, hey, love to do it here with this community, and then we'll work on the church connection shortly after that. But we had you
Oh, it
had
was
family
packed.
in
It
the
was
house.
it was a little nerve wracking. It was packed.
Thankfully, we had multiple exits in the basement, so we weren't breaking any laws on the fire code or whatever. But man, yeah, yeah, grandma was there, dad was there, you had some family there, dude. That was a sweet night, and that we also talk about that being a starting line, right? Like that was kind of the really beginning of you saying, dude, I'm all in. And then from there, just love for you to reflect a little bit of what are some things you picked up afterwards. So we were able to have some time. I know Tommy hopped in too, took the baton a bit on going through the core, talking through, some different books, just getting in the word. What were some of those key takeaways that spring
Yeah.
semester?
I thought meeting with you and Tommy was just such a good thing, for me in that starting line, because I could have started and, whether that was me leaving if I did or, just not making the time really to meet with you guys, I could have just got carried away and, stayed on that path, just being content, normal, fine. Oh yeah, I got baptized. So now I'm, saved. So I don't need to learn more or anything like that. But, with you guys helping me out in that aspect and, reading, within the 5 marks of the man, the core values, books that obviously I still have today. And I really enjoyed learning and not just reading it, but, going over the parts, writing notes, speaking about it. I thought you guys did an amazing job on that. Remembering Bible verses, that was always a challenge, with Wade and Tommy getting on us. But obviously really helped me. And a few things that I learned through that was, just my desires, for certain things going away, because it was not that I have to stop these things. It was the Lord, just putting my desires elsewhere, whether that was, going with a friend, to read about our book. Wait, going to go learn more about this, read this chapter, come back the next day and, speak about it, just putting my desires elsewhere, into the word. So I thought that was a big one. And just surrounding yourself, also with, Christ like minded people, because it's hard to ask for advice for someone who I'm not as close with, or, someone who isn't really as like minded, rather than, a brother in Christ who, he's going to hold me accountable and, put me in the right directions, likewise as well. I would do the same for him. So I think those are two big takeaways. And obviously a lot of others, especially in the core book, it was good. I'll have to get back into that, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you mentioned just several disciplines right there I think will serve you well for the rest of your life. Like, yeah,
Yep.
how to get in God's word, prayer. I know you all got some reps praying out loud that were not near as frequent as they once were, and
Oh, yep.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
I was the winner.
memorizing verses the whole nine, and then we mixed in some ping pong there.
Biggest
So
match, it was against Kay. I was so afraid playing against her. Oh my goodness. She's good. She is very good. Yeah, 100%.
well, next time you're in town, we'll have to get a little rematch for that. That'd be
There's
good.
no right. There hasn't been any ping pong
Get you a
tables
good
here
paddle. We'll be
yet.
ready to
There
rock.
was in Wisconsin. I was playing every day, but some of the international teammates were like killing me.
Yeah,
Levels, what I'm saying?
just
Right,
level.
right.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to. While you're not playing as recent, we'll have to catch you then. Yeah. Well, amazing. I love just reflecting on some of the generational impact that, like Sam kind of looping you in, and then you immediately saw that model and like, hey, I need to have somebody kind of walking with me, and you brought Wade in, and then now just grateful to have even some of the current
Wow.
soccer guys. There was a team Bible study going on this past season that was player led, that was awesome. And I remember there was a time where it was
Mm.
it was just you and Sam. You were like, I was like, here's the book, and then you all like threw the invites out, but you were at the hotel, you'd throw it out. But then I was like, dude, even if it's just you two, there's still value in it. And y'all kept pushing through. Same thing
Mhm.
with you and Wade. And so just your faithfulness, even when the response wasn't always what you would have dreamed about, but just continuing to grow. I've always been impressed by that. So is there anything that you're reading recently, or something you've listened
I
to,
think,
or a worship song that's been really speaking to you in recent weeks? Or yeah, what's something you feel
uh,
like saying to you these days?
nothing at the moment. I'm just looking through a few books that I've been reading. No questions as if now. There is this one book. I believe it's called. Oh, I'd have to grab this. Can I go grab it real quick? It's just in my. So this book, still need to finish it. Only read the first few chapters, but I don't know if you could. Called Hope in the Dark. Believing God is good when life
Mm,
is not. I got this book in a care package that you sent me. I was always a little
mm,
hesitant, when to read it. I always was thinking maybe I should wait, when I in that kind of dark pit, struggling with some things, to where this book could really help me get out of, like that little hump, or, because, it dives in, straight away, like some hard moments, some hardships. And I think this has helped me, remember that, soccer isn't everything, because, it's, obviously in a professional season, when things really aren't going your way, that could really tear your mood down, to be honest. And, I just have to remember that God is good always, even when my current situation isn't. And, I'm more blessed than a lot of people. And so, I have to forever be grateful for that, and remember that, I can't idolize my sport. So I think this book has been amazing. It just reminded me that there was a part in here, can't find it right now, but it was a good quote that, I try to remember. I don't remember it right now. I'm on the spot, but yeah, I'll have to find that. If I speak to you about that, saying post show. But Really?
Craig Rochelle is a stud. Like, so that's the guy whose church came up with the YouVersion Bible app. So I love that guy for sure. Yeah, yeah. So I'll have to dig into that book. I've read some of his other stuff and obviously listened to some of his sermons. But that's I think such a key thing to have walking into, a lot of times when we talk about testimony, we talk about life before Jesus, when and how we decided to follow Jesus and how did that happen and what was the heart change there? And then you got to include, hey, what was life after saying yes? And the lie that I think some people can sometimes pitch is like, you just say yes to Jesus and everything's going to be awesome and comfortable and perfect. And it's all just going to be sunshines and rainbows and everything else. But we're actually almost promised that, in John 16, it says, in this world, you will have suffering, but take heart. I have overcome the world. And so that's how we can have that hope in the darkness. And I know it's all relative. Like, there's obviously massive tragedies and really intense, like hard things. But even as something as simple as a nagging injury, that's enough to take you off the field. Like that can put people in a really dark place, especially if your sport is your identity and not just something that you do. So I know that's you probably had some opportunities to kind of think through that, even maybe before reading that book. But how was your
Yeah.
perspective on
I think it
injuries?
could be very good for you, or obviously, harmful for you, depending on, kind of how you look at it and how you take it on. It's easy to mope. It's easy to just say excuses. This isn't working for me. I'm injured. I can, kind of relax now, not as much pressure on you. So yeah, I'm saying it's tough. Obviously I've been experiencing that now, and it's, I'm saying it's not easy. It's not easy to, read, I'm saying, get in the word every day. I'm saying? It's not easy to go over, so like the devotionals and all that. So I think, just whatever you can do, any reminders, I remember you speaking about just having those reminders, whether that's a verse, on tape, it's on wrist tape or a wristband, something that could, you can hold that and remember, okay, everything's going to be all right. Let me take a breath. The Lord is with me, throughout everything, no matter the hardships. So I think just in that injury moment, whatever it is, and you have a little bit more free time is when you can dive deeper into the word and put your time into that and getting healthy and remembering that, you know, this isn't the end, just because you're injured, there's always a fight back. And so, yeah, I think that was a verse, Hebrews 10:35. It was like, your patience. It was, hold on, let me try and find it. It is, so don't throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you need endurance, so that after you have done God's will, you may receive what was promised. So that's been a verse that, I've definitely written on my wrist, what I'm saying, before a game or, trainings,
Mm,
just to have, just to remember, that patient and to have,
yeah, I love that, and I think sometimes the wrist on the tape or the
right.
cleats or whatever can get a little misunderstood because some people think, oh, they're just trying to kind of like, you know, flash their faith in a proudful way sometimes. And that might be the heart sometimes. But from my experience, most athletes, it's really for their own mind and their own heart during competition. They have kind of like a reset reminder and a point to where like so and so had a verse on there, whatever, but we know that their life isn't perfect. Well, it's like, well, dude, none of us are perfect, but they're out here, trying to live this thing out that's super intense, but also have some great reminders there. So that's a great one to have on there. I love that. Give us a little snapshot of life right now. Like where are you at? You're still playing
Sounds good.
soccer.
Yeah, so I am currently in Sarasota, Florida. You know, I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to come here in last summer for the semi-pro season. It's a league called USL2. It's basically where a lot of college athletes, younger players, come together for a summer league to stay fit for their collegiate season, or they're going there to find opportunity to play at the next level. So luckily, I was able to get this opportunity to come here mid-season, knowing that they were going to be pro the following year. I came here, did what I had to do, had a good season, and the owner ended up signing me. So I reported January, so about 6 months ago, and that was the start of our season, my first professional season. And yeah, it's been a journey so far. We haven't started off the best, but I think our coach has done a good job just building our team with just a bunch of good guys, not just who are good on the field, but off the field is so important in building that culture. So yeah, I'm in paradise. You know what I'm saying? It's called Sarasota Paradise for a reason. So yeah, we finish in October, so we're about halfway point now. Yeah, yeah. So it is a lot, but we're starting to head this way. In
It's a
terms
long
of
year. It's a long season.
results, just our team just starting to find our identity and all of that. So yeah. And other than that, life outside of soccer, beach, sun, meeting new people. He was in big cities here and there, trying out different coffee shops, run clubs. So yeah,
Yeah. Nice. Good deal. Well, hey, who do you got in the World Cup right now? It's going on at the moment. We're getting down,
definitely possible. Definitely possible.
and
I
is it
want,
possible that Ronaldo and Messi are going to play each other? Or is
obviously, I
that
have to root for
still is that
USA.
not happening?
Not that I have to.
Okay,
I want to. Obviously, I want them to go as far as they can. But if it's not them, I
100%.
think it's going to be Portugal. I got to root for Ronaldo. They have a top squad. So yeah, maybe they see Messi, maybe they don't. Who knows? France is a pro too, so it's
That's right. Hard tell. Yeah. Well, as this recording, USA plays later tonight, so we'll be tracking that. It should be
Mhm.
an exciting
Yeah.
one. And then one thing I've noticed too, again, just kind of going back to the reminders of the tape, or just kind of the collision of
Mhm.
faith and sport, what it can be. It's been really cool to see Team USA, huddle up together at these matches and have the player just kneel down and pray and just kind of obviously it's in front of millions of eyeballs, but you also feel like it's this really
Yeah.
intimate moment with the team as well, and that it matters to them at a deep level. And I just been so encouraged by that God's doing something, whether it's at the World Cup at soccer or a few months ago is the World Baseball Classic. He had
Mhm.
Gino Suarez, who's now with the Reds, but he was with
Yeah.
his Venezuela team, and you could tell that there was just a faith piece to that locker room as well, and so cool to see on all different scales. I just got doing some really cool things in and through the sports world, and I know that you're a part of that as well. That you're still living it out, and finding working hard to trying to find local church and still trying to grow. And so just know that we're cheering you on from afar, and really just yeah, it's just been a joy to kind of think back and reflect on our time
Thank you,
together.
man. Really appreciate you, Nate.